Well, this morning as we come to the table, I have just a short meditation for you this morning as we get started here today. What you see up here is one of the most famous pictures in history. It is the most reproduced picture in all of history. It's called the Blue Marble. And this picture was taken in 1972 by the astronaut on Apollo 17, Harrison Schmitt. I've never heard of Harrison Schmitt, but there are so many of those astronauts who we never heard of because going to the moon just became another thing. But on this particular mission, there was a person that started a campaign that wanted to have a picture taken of the Earth. Because to that point, there were no pictures taken of the Earth. Now, I want you to think about that for a minute. Debbie and I were history teachers, and she was a longtime geography teacher. So you've all seen a map sitting in a classroom. But the thing is, that map that sits in a classroom is not a picture. It was taken off of exploration and measurement and precise accuracy, but there had been no pictures taken of the Earth until Harrison Schmitt took this picture. Now, this picture isn't the exact picture. This is one taken after that. The actual picture, if you've ever seen it, has Africa in it. And it was actually taken upside down. So anytime you see this represented, the way the trajectory of the spaceship was going, it took the world upside down. So when they actually made the picture, they turned it right side up and put it on a black surface and to highlight the fragility of the Earth. This was taken later. That picture is between 18,000 and 24,000 miles away from Earth to be able to capture that picture. And when you look at it, you go, wow, what a beautiful world God created. When you see that, so you can see North America, South America on there. It's a cloudy day when that picture was taken in Kentucky, wasn't it? Always sunny in Florida, though, okay? But you can sit there and go, okay, I know exactly where I'm at on this map. And that's a beautiful thing. It's an amazing thing. You can easily understand, like I said, why God declared it very good. But the world that Jesus had been born into was a broken world. By the time Jesus came along, the world was horribly broken. And I am sure that as the disciples and the crowd gathered around Jesus and heard Jesus say this, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul or lose his soul? I think when they actually heard this, because they had no concept of maps during that time period, they had no concepts of what the Earth looked like in that time period. What came to their mind were two things. What came to their mind were the Romans, because everybody at this time knew that the Romans had forged a global empire, at least to what they believed was the globe. We know today that during the Pax Romana, which Jesus lived in, the 250 years of Roman peace, it really was a global world at the time. We find artifacts from Han China, the Han dynasty of China, in Europe, and vice versa, Roman artifacts in Han dynasty China. So there was a back and forth during that time. Or they thought about the religious leaders in the Sanhedrin of their time when Jesus said, what does it use? What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? Let's talk about Rome and the Sanhedrin for a minute. The Roman legionary that you see up there, and don't get me wrong, Rome was my specialty in undergrad, and I love the whole military ethos of the Roman army, but this is kind of repugnant to me. Because if you look at his standard that he's bearing, okay, the Romans always had things painted on their shields, and they had standards, and everything meant something. But if you notice at the top of that standard, is a hand. And once Rome left the republic and into the empire, their standards bore the hand of the emperor. And it was a direct copy of the hand of the emperor. The emperor would have it done in wax, and then they would pour it over and over and over again. And all the legions of Rome, with all of their might, with all of their power, bore the hand of the emperor. You knew that what they were doing was on behalf of Caesar. To these people of this time period, Rome represented physical power. If you were a Roman during this time period, you had family tradition to follow. Many of you have probably seen the Godfather movies, right? There's a strong sense of family in that Italian movie family. In real Roman homes, they had a vestibule. You walked into the front room, and there you saw a cabinet, like an armoire. And then you also had a little place where the local house gods were. But in that armoire, when you opened it up, there were the wax death masks of generation after generation after generation of family head. Talk about pressure. Brought from your tradition, brought from your family. And if you are quick to go, those patriarchal Romans, I want to remind you that in a little time later, when the Europeans made contact with the Iroquois nation, they were baffled by their social structure because their social structure was matrilineal. It was based on women being the heads of the families. And you didn't get any more peace, and you didn't get any more tranquility. And as a matter of fact, I can tell you as a military historian, their wars were way more savage because their wars were based on grief and the loss of children. So family tradition was something that the Romans followed. Brute force, strength of purpose. I can do this. I can pull myself up by my own bootstraps. Tenacity and conquest. That's what they saw when they saw Romans. But if they weren't thinking about the Romans, they were thinking about the Sanhedrin. And that was a spiritual world. Now, you can see here, if you're wondering what they're carrying, they are carrying protective covers over the Torah. And the Torah is extremely heavy. And every time in their worship service that they start worship, they open a cupboard and they bring out the Torah. And we have stories about Jesus stepping up and reading from the Torah. But these are very heavy. You can see them struggling under the weight of the laws of Moses. As a matter of fact, when I was looking up this picture, a lot of times they'll take one of these, take it out, unscroll it, and lift it up above their heads before they put it down. And there was an NPR news article that said, great concern in the Jewish community of how damaging it is to hold up the Torah. I was like, what? But that shows you how heavy it is. And they knew the weight of it as Jesus spoke, the Mosaic tradition. Time and time again, when Jesus actually said something, he was confronted by Pharisees and Sadducees who said, but our father Moses says this. There were heavy burdens placed on them because of God's Levitical law. And they could always say, well, it's the will of God. You know, that's funny because you know what Jesus always said? He never said it's the will of God. He never browbeat somebody into doing something because it was the will of God. He always talked about the will of his Father. The will of my Father is for us to love one another. The tenacity here is not in conquest. The tenacity here is in observance. And how many times did Jesus get called out for breaking the Sabbath by healing somebody or helping somebody? You see, when Jesus talked about this world, people either saw the Roman world or they saw the world of the Sanhedrin. And both of those worlds were not free and they were broken. What does it profit a man to gain this whole world, yet forfeit his soul? When we look at that big blue marble and we look at Kentucky, we get an idea of our sense of place, but when we come down out of space and come to our surroundings, we find the brokenness of our family, the brokenness of our lives. Jesus asks, if we gain everything above, tradition, force, being good, having religious observances, is it worth it if you lose your soul? See, coming after Jesus into a new creation, the world as it is meant to be is very different. Now, I'm going to go back to this. See what they're all carrying? Carrying the standard, carrying the Torah. But Jesus says, if you want to follow me, if you want to be in the world that God intended, you have to pick up your cross and follow me. There's sacrifice there. Following him is relational. Many of you watch the television show that depicts Jesus. What's the name of that show? The what? The Chosen. All right, you can tell if I watch it. But I've watched it a couple of times. And the great appeal of The Chosen is this. You see time and time and time again, Jesus interacting every day. The beauty of that show shows you that Jesus just wasn't excerpts of talking, but he was actually engaging with life, with his disciples. Following him is about relationship. And losing your life is about being transformed by him. Do you hear what Jesus asks us to do? Sacrifice, relationship, and transformation. Jesus asks for everything. There is no room to hold anything back to get out of brokenness and be in relationship that's transformed by him. Let me say that again. There is no room to hold anything back if you want to be out of the brokenness that you're in right now. And you want to be in a relationship transformed by him. Christ is at work in you and me. And we've said this multiple times in here. Okay? And I'll quiz you on it. As Methodists, we believe that we were saved, that we are saved, and that we are being. That we were, are, and being. All three. All at one time. Christ is at work saving us only when we yield to his way and surrender to his truth. Listen to me, teens. Listen to me, young adults. It's not the truth that the world tells you. It's not the truth that you can pick up on social media. It is not the truth that you can find on the internet. That is a lie from hell. You follow any of that, and you'll be popular, and you'll have an easy way, because broad is the way that leads to destruction, but narrow is the way that leads to Jesus. I don't want any of you on that day, which is coming soon, when Jesus comes back, to have to stand before him, like our verses say here. And because you denied him on this earth, you denied him with your lifestyle, you denied him with your mouth, you denied him in the presence of others, it says right here, he'll deny you in front of the Father. You do not want to be in that place. Christ is at work only when we yield his way. when we surrender to his truth and when we cooperate in his life and his plan. So what are you holding back? As we go to our table, let me tell you a story. Once there was a boy in the time of the Depression, and I don't know if they teach the Depression anymore in school. I don't know that they do, because everybody of a certain age right now thinks that their life is the most horrible, worst part that you all that are older, you have no idea how hard it is on us. That we didn't have jobs and we can't, look. I'm going to be an old man here for a minute. When Debbie and I started in life, we had nothing, okay? We were paid $25 a day to sub-children that didn't care about us, didn't listen to us, okay? So don't give me that. My grandfather could probably get up here and just look at me and shake his head and go, "You think that's bad? I got a story for you." I stood in a line for bread and a moldy, nasty apple, and we thought it was good, all right? Every society is going to have its problem, but this story starts in the Great Depression. And if you want to know who really had it bad in the Depression, it was an orphan, somebody who didn't have a mom or a dad. I almost pulled the Licking County Children's Home up here. I lived a couple of blocks down from that gigantic building that held orphans. Many of you in our modern times kind of have an idea of it because Little Orphan Annie, the musical. It's a hard knock life. Well, this little boy grew up and he found that he had a gift for playing marbles. He was really good at it. And for those of you younger ones that don't know what marbles are, you take a marble, you draw a circle in the dirt, and then you pitch other marbles in there and you flick the marble until they knock out. And then you take all of the marbles that get knocked out by your marble and you hope that your marble doesn't come out. I think that's a pretty good explanation of it, okay? And this kid could play marbles like nobody's business. He always won. He had more and more marbles in his bag. He had to go from a little poke sack to almost a medium seed bag. He had so many marbles. He got to the point when he was in high school, when he was a teen, that he was so good that people came up and marbles weren't enough. People said, "Hey, I'll put some money up. I bet you can't beat me." And so the kid went from having a talent and getting all of these marbles to actually playing marbles for money. And he made a pretty good life for himself. We always think of pool sharks. He was a marble shark. And he made quite a lot of money out of it. And he had a place where he stood in his town on the corner waiting for people to come and challenge him. People came from out of town. They came from everywhere else to challenge him to marbles. And he was making a pretty good life for himself. But one day he looked across the street and there was a girl about his age across the street. She was a cute little girl. And she was selling lollipops. Because times were hard. You just couldn't go into a store. There's no Amazon. You couldn't buy things. You had to go to people on the side of the street. And she sold those big old lollipops. And day in and day out, she made more money. You could tell she was doing well. Her clothes started to get better. And as the days passed, that boy looked at that girl and thought, "I think I like her. I might take her out to lunch." That's exactly what he did. And they formed a relationship. And finally they decided, well, she decided, you know how that is, guys, that if she truly loved her, that they would exchange lollipops for marbles. It was the one important thing in their world. That if they gave it up, that would show their absolute love for each other. And so the girl held out all of her lollipops. to the guy, and he took him. The guy sighed and said, this girl's the one. I love her. I want a relationship that's meaningful in my life now. She's the important one. And he reached down in his pocket, and he felt that bag of marbles down in there. And as he went to draw them out, as he drew them out, there was one loose marble in his pocket. And he caught it between his fingers. It was his blue agate marble. That just wasn't any marble. He twirled it between his fingers as he had the bag in his hand, and he thought, I can feel every nick, every scar, every scratch. This marble's been awful good to me. It's the marble that I use. It's the marble that gives me my value as a person. It's the marble that made me my wealth and brought me my fame. And he came to a moment of decision. Am I going to exchange all the marbles for this girl? He drew the marble bag out of his pocket, and as he did, he let that one marble drop back into his pocket. Because, who would ever know? She wouldn't know. Nobody'd ever know. Here's my question for you today. Was that one marble more valuable than a lifelong, life-changing, loving relationship? What are you holding back right now? What did you hold back from God in 2025? What are you holding back from Him right now in your life? What validates you, man or woman in here? What validates you? What do you think is important? What do you hold on to that you're not willing at all to give up? As we come to this table this morning, I want you to think about something. Jesus held nothing back to have a relationship with you. God Himself held nothing back to have a relationship with you. The Father didn't hold back His Son. Jesus didn't hold back His life. The Holy Spirit doesn't hold back His power to live the life of holiness towards God. So as we're at this table this morning, I'm going to ask you again, what are you holding back? Now, every month, we have an altar call in the Methodist Church. And it's an altar call that almost everybody comes to. You're all invited to it. Christ invites you to this table, all of you who love Him and who earnestly repent of your sin